Dog Works Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dog Works. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by First Paw Coffee Company, specializing in private label premium blend coffee. If you're serious about coffee, you should check it out. First Paw Coffee's passion is high-quality, small-batch roasted coffee. They take the extra time to taste and get everything perfect before they release new blends. They aim to bring you a cup of happiness each time you pour yourself some coffee. Find out more at ak.dog/free and enter for a chance to win some First Paw Coffee prizes, a book from our collection, and tote bag. One winner will be selected at random each month. That's ak.dog/free.
From First Paw Media, sponsored by First Paw Coffee Company, this is the Dog Driver Show. Visit our website at dogworksradio.com. Now here are your hosts, Robert Forto and Parto.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is the Dog Driver Show and this is Robert. I'm here with my co-host KP. KP, how's it going?
Oh, doing excellent. Today we have a very, very interesting guest with us, Blaine Streeper. For people familiar with him, they call him Buddy Streeper. And Buddy has been racing for years and years. I believe since probably he could walk, he was probably on his sled. And we're going to be talking to him in length about some of the different aspects of competitive racing and training in a world-class environment that he is in.
Welcome to the show, buddy. This is Robert, and I'm sure that KP has quite a few questions for you here, and I'm sure I will too. I'm more of an expedition and distance musher, so this is still new to me, but I always learn. Thanks a lot for being on, and I'm really enjoying this series with the Streeper family. Kick it off for us, KP.
Buddy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, actually. Who you are, how long you've been racing, how old you are, and how's everything in British Columbia?
Yeah, super. My name is Buddy Streeper, and I grew up in a sled dog racing family. Both my father and my uncle been running sled dogs since before I was born, so you are correct. I was probably riding in a dog sled prior to actually walking, and there is some pictures of me racing in the one dog class with my gloves upside down and kind of on backwards. So definitely been doing this my entire life. And so over 30 years of competitive racing, and very, very serious the last 20 years, myself and my father and now my wife been focused on professional racing in the North American circuit. But we live here in northern British Columbia, Fort Nelson. We got a kennel with great access to some awesome trails and a good location for a good weather pattern. Usually a pretty good weather pattern, so we're usually pretty consistent weather from October till April. Very few real warm-ups or Chinooks or freezing rain. So a real ideal place for a sled dog kennel. And this is where my family and I have chosen to raise our family and the profession that have chosen. And we breed and raise our own dogs for competing in the world's most prestigious sled dog races in North America, focusing primarily on sprint and stage racing, but have ventured into some mid-distance type races as well, but primarily focused on the unlimited class, and looking forward to having another great year this year.
Buddy, you've been racing competitively for years and years and years. Have you always raced? I know that your sister Sarah raced for a few years. I saw her name. We were running limited classes in Europe. Or you've been always involved, or you just kind of took over the competition in the kennel slowly but surely?
No, I was always involved. First race was age 4 or 5 years old. Starting in the one dog junior races here in Canada, and then at age 10 racing against the adults in the 6 dog limited class here in the regional area of Western Canada and the Yukon. And then at age 12 I was my first open class race, and at age 16 was my first open North American, and at 18 I raced for Rendezvous, and traveled to Europe several times and competed in several locations in Todmos and Bad Mittendorf. So yeah, my whole life I've been racing and competing. And me and my sister definitely hand in hand when we were younger. And then slowly but surely, it was my focus. It was my ambition in life. That's something I wanted to do.
As we all know, in order to have a good dog team, we have to train well. Tell us a little bit about training a world champion sled dog team.
Yeah, good question. You know, the commitment and the trust is, I believe, is probably two of the main ingredients, and it's a big pot with a lot of ingredients, and that's a very broad question. But I believe the commitment to the dogs and the trust that you get from the dogs from doing a day in and day out routine with them, the animal learns to trust you, and the bond that you gain over a period of time with the animals, because you are the primary caregiver and the first person there to touch them when they're born and the last one to hold them on a cold night. So just the commitment and the trust that you gain with the dogs and the bond that you have, I believe is a very big factor in terms of training. And a few of the things that I like to focus on is recall. I do believe that each dog should be able to recall very quickly, know their name, know the limits of the free play session, free playing, and not wandering off, and if do very, very good recall. So I like to teach a lot of off leash program here with our free running and free play exercises, and I do believe that correlates really well into the team and how they can respond and how they can work in the team, and you can talk to each dog individually if they know their name and they know some parameters that I've set for them. And some other things that I like to do with my training routine is I like to do the free running. We've talked about the free running and the free exercise and the free play, and right from the puppies, when the puppies are 5-6 weeks old and they first start getting adventurous and exploring and big enough now to actually go for daily walks, we start walking the puppies as soon as possible, and first time we usually take the mom along with us, but very quickly I separate the mom and do the puppies just by myself, and what I like to do is to walk them around the property, and now I'm going to correct that, and I always say that to my workers or new people that come and join my team. I'm not walking, I'm leading the dogs around the property. So I'm actually the one in front, and I'm the one that the dogs focus on when we're out walking. And if I have to go to a light jog to stay just a half a step in front of the dogs, then I will. And then as soon as the puppies outrun me, which is not very long, we go to a pedal bike, and then I'll switch from a pedal bike to an ATV, usually around the 2-month mark, when the puppies are capable of running in multiple kilometers or a mile or so on any given day. And I really focus on the free running, the free play, and the recall, which I think are very big aspects and not only for training, but for my own enjoyment. And I believe anytime you do anything like this type of sport with the time, commitment, and the restraints that it has, you better enjoy what you do. And if not, it becomes very overwhelming, the amount of time and work that it takes. So I like to focus on the things that I really like, which is the free running, the puppy time, the socializing with the puppies, and going for the walks and the free play. So that's probably the main focus that I like, or one of the main focuses that I like to focus on during the season and the year with the dogs.
But I've seen a lot of videos of you playing with the pups and running, doing a lot of free running. What time of the year do you start your real training for your adults, harness training I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now, that is really dictated by the weather. We fortunately live in a northern climate, and I've kind of touched on that we have a very consistent weather pattern. I mean, there has been some changes in the last 10 years or so, but it's a fairly consistent weather pattern. So I actually have a temperature cutoff, and that temperature cutoff is 40 degrees Fahrenheit. If it's 40 degrees Fahrenheit, I will not run the dog in harness in training in the fall months. So usually that date starts to get very consistent weather below that temperature is around October 1st. Now, some months, some years, we will be able to get a handful of runs in the month of September where the temperature allows, but not very consistent. Usually maybe one run in the middle of September and a couple more around the end of the month before the weather kind of consistently changes, and then we can run on a more of a routine schedule. So my upper temperature cutoff is 40 degrees Fahrenheit for harness running in fall conditions on dirt. It's 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and so typically here that's October 1st, and it'll go a little bit each way, but you could pretty well say October 1st is when I switch to harness training and training the dogs in the team format.
And what pattern of training do you maintain? I mean, I talked to Egil in the past, and he was saying day off, day on, day off, day on. Do you maintain the same pattern, or yours is different?
No, mine's that is my pattern. My pattern is 1 day on, 1 day off, and religiously 1 day on, 1 day off. We never train back-to-back consecutive days, ever. So now it might change if I think that the dogs need extra rest, and I will go 1 day on, 2 days off if I think they might need it. And when they might need that is when, let's say we get into a little more strenuous training in the months of late November, December, and January, when our mileage is increased, and I feel that the team could benefit from multiple days of rest. So usually after a big run, possibly of 20 to 25 miles or more, I will often give them an extra day of rest. Or whenever I feel that the trail is not conclusive to running a good pace. So if we wake up one morning and it's our day to run and it snowed 6 inches, and I don't feel that the trail is adequate for the type of running that I want it to do, and I will take a day off or multiple days off until I get the trail ideally set up to maintain the speed that I know is required for training.
And what type of mileage do you start your training usually, harness training for the dogs?
My runs all start at 3 miles. That's my shortest loop, and I like that mileage. I like the 3 mile mileage for us, and so I have a great 3 mile trail, fairly shaded the whole way, and usually a very, very good surface unless it gets wet, and it can get a little muddy. But generally speaking, 3 miles we start at, and I like to do each run minimum of 3, ideally 4 runs per each mileage before I move up a jump. And usually I like to jump no more than 25% of the mileage. It's a little difficult at the short distances, anything under 10 miles because you're limited to your options. But my loops go like this. I do 3 or 4 runs at 3 miles, 3 or 4 runs at 4.5 miles, 3 or 4 runs at 7 miles, and then 3 or 4 runs at 10 miles. And then I pretty well stick to that 25% increment, and I'll go to 12.5, then I'll go up to 15, and then I usually go to 18, and then 321s, and then 325s, 330s, and 335s, and that's the kind of the increments that I like to do. So I don't like to jump mileages too much, so 20 to 25% is my max, and I don't like to run too many days consecutively or on a too rigorous of a schedule. And basically what I'm doing is I'm not getting the dogs tired. I want to build them up properly. I want the dogs always happy. I always want the dogs finishing strong, and I never want to overburden them with jumping the mileages too quick. In the sprint racing world, speed is a very fragile thing. Speed is very fragile. There's many, many ways that you can lose the speed. And here's some examples. Running consecutive days, too many consecutive days, over and over. What that'll do is that'll detour the dog, possibly sour the dog. Maybe the dogs kind of lose their interest. That's one way to lose the speed. Jumping mileage is too quick. Possibly going from 5 miles to 10 miles to 20 miles in a short period of time. That's a way that you'll lose your speed as well. And once you lose your speed, it's very near to impossible to recover that speed throughout the racing season. And I believe it's a very fine line that you don't want to be walking on. So it's our recipe that we've worked with, and it's our formula, we've been happy with it. And I'm really I think it's a proven successful record.
So earlier you learned about First Paw Coffee Company, and now I'm going to tell you about its Tail Wagger Blend. First Paw Coffee Company's Tail Wagger Blend is their first offering, and its name and label were crowdsourced from their Facebook fans. How cool is that? The Tail Wagger Blend is a private label premium blend that was developed just for them. It is a medium roast from Colombian beans with tastes of Brazil nuts, grapefruit, and oak. Be sure to go to ak.dog/free and enter to win a bunch of cool prizes. That's ak.dog/free.
Buddy, you've done some of the world's biggest and probably all of the world's biggest and prestigious races, and you've probably won every one of them at least once, and several of them many more. How do you maintain a healthy dog team doing this circuit, going from Le Pas to Rendezvous to Onak to Toke and all the not?
Yeah, that's a good question, KP. And oftentimes that's a question that some fellow competitors will ask me throughout the race season of how to do that. And, that's probably one of the biggest hurdles of traveling is the potential for sicknesses or illnesses. So some of the ways that I recognize that is we've already discussed that I'm a big believer in rest, and to recognize the dogs, recognize how they're feeling and how their demeanor is, and just recognize when they need extra rest and how are they going to travel over the next period of time. So I sure believe in never getting the dogs down, never getting the dogs, I keep a very clean and healthy environment. We're very like most, we have a very good routine for letting the dogs out of the truck, a good clean straw, good clean, very high quality food, very consistent food. The food that we make in November, I make 120 days worth, so every dog gets the exact same food throughout the whole winter, with zero variance from beef quantity to fat quantity. It's the exact same because we mixed it all in the same day. So it's a consistent food. What else? And then I use a lot of supplements. I'm a believer in diet and nutrition, and I believe that there's some very, very good supplements out there, and notably the one that I'm very keen on and I've seen great results with is some products from Canine Health Forward, and notably that's one called Genesis, which is a really good probiotic, and it allows the dogs to metabolize their food, and it has a healthy gut. They have a healthy gut. And any doctor or a naturopath will tell you that when you have a healthy gut or a healthy stomach and the body's working properly, then the immune system is doing its correct job, and you'll be able to fend off any sicknesses or potential illnesses. So that's probably, in a nutshell, a real short version on how we maintain a healthy dog team throughout the winter months. But also another thing that helps to maintain a healthy dog team is the travel, is the exposure to the other germ pools from, the different locations that we go. And I always have an open door policy within my own kennel. And many people stop in here. Good friends, Ken and Lori Cheezick, a mutual friend of ours, stop in here and train dogs going north. Annie and Marco Rivet stop and train dogs, spend several days here. The Becks from Yellowknife, many people come here and use this as a training ground on their route to Alaska or potentially traveling to the lower 48. We just had 2 Alaskan girls stop in here just recently on their way to Eastern Canada to race in some dry land events, and they used our trails. So I really think that exposure to the outside world and allowing them dogs to have many different forms of germs come into the yard and allows the dogs to have really healthy immune systems. And I'd have to have a really hard time even thinking of a time that my dog team was actually sick. But it does happen, and if it does, I believe in the rest and good quality food and good clean bedding, and just keep the dogs happy.
So, Buddy, a lot of the folks that listen to our show are not involved in mushing whatsoever, and I'm really curious to find out about sort of the life on the road. I know that you guys pack up the dogs and your crew for sometimes weeks and months on end. How do you deal with that, in particular with possibly boredom, burnout, the whole 9 yards of just kind of just traveling the country, traveling this part of the world, pretty much self-contained? How do you guys deal with that as a team and as a family?
Yeah, that's a good question, and yeah, I would have to say there is challenges. I mean, being away from home, being on the road, we miss birthdays, anniversaries. I've missed Christmas on several occasions because of the primary goal and the focus that we have, the commitment to the animal and the focus to travel and to maximize the dog's ability. So in order to do that, you have to make some sacrifices. And those are some things that my family has accepted and my friends have accepted. And it's a goal, and that's what the separation is. That there's many ingredients that go into the stew pot that makes a team better on any given weekend than these competitors. And I do believe that the commitment is one of that. So the travel is a large commitment, but it's a focus that we have, and we know what the dogs need, and if they need to travel to a different location because our current place here at home didn't have adequate snow conditions or the temperatures weren't proper for maintaining our dog team, we will travel, and we will leave earlier than expected, and we will change at a moment's notice and do something entirely different so it maximizes the dog's ability and our abilities to perform at a later date. So it's a long season, but if you do something you love, and fortunately for me, that's playing with dogs, and if you're able to have a passion about it, it's easy. It's something that you want to do, and to me, it's second nature. It's my profession. It's what I know. It's all I really know is the focus of the animals. So I've had a great father and a good upbringing in my family, and we've shared similar passions and goals in the terms of the dogs. And now my wife and my children are involved in it. So I guess that would be another huge factor as well, is the understanding from the family and similarity thoughts and interests and ambitions within the sport, and not just the sport, within working with the animals. And so the passion for the dogs and the passion for to travel with them and to compete, it's a challenge, but it's very rewarding in the end.
Buddy, you mentioned the circuit when you start leaving the house and basically getting ready for the some of the top races around North America. I'm assuming when you hit the road or you start your season, you target one specific race. Is that correct, or you target every single one of them? Yeah,
good question. No, I target. I have my majors that I really like to focus on, and my majors are are the Wyoming stage race, and then the big races within the unlimited class or the Canadian 10-dog circuit. So them big races are La Pas, Manitoba, 10-dog world championship there in central Canada, and then the Anchorage for Rendezvous in Alaska, and the Open North American in Fairbanks, and then another one that I've focused on in years past but haven't recently, but looks like possibly this year again we'll be going back to Yellowknife for the Canadian Championship Dog Derby. And then also we have a race here locally in Fort Nelson that we put on called the Canadian Open Championship, and that's the one here in Fort Nelson. So them are my main focuses, is obviously to go and compete in them, and I understand that I may miss a race beforehand to set up the team adequately to perform, but once traveling, I do like, if I can and the dogs are feeling fit, I do like to be able to race multiple races on any given time lapse that I'm away from home. So yeah, the main big races are my focus, and those are the ones I described.
As a professional sled dog driver, I'm assuming the purses are a big factor in those selections. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, them majors, in my opinion, and that's how I gauge a dog team, is how they perform in them, because a lot of people, they travel just exclusively to that one race, or that's their big trip up to Alaska, or they train all year for several years just to go and race in the Manitoba La Pas. So those races, with the history, many of them races here, I'll just run it down. La Pas is 75 years old, Anchorage is 70, Fairbanks is 75, Yellowknife is 70 years, Laconia, New Hampshire is upwards of a 95 to 100 years old race, and Wyoming now is into its 25th year. So, the prestigious of the event, I believe, carries that influence on me as well. Is obviously the purse money is great, and I consider that to be a bonus. And then any of the other races throughout the race season, if there's a younger race or a new race that has a good record of being a good event and has a substantial purse as well, then we'll use it. But again, the main focus will be to building the teams properly to compete in the major races, as I described.
So how do we make you come to Eagle River and run Eagle River Classic then?
Yeah, so that one's a little bit tough, because usually about that time then we are in Wyoming. And so in the month of January and the first 2 weeks of February, we are actually, in a different part of the geographical area. And unfortunately, I wish I could be in two places at once, but sometimes you got to, pick one or the other, and that's kind of been our focus for the last 10 years.
Let's talk about equipment a little bit, buddy. I noticed that you've been racing, of course, like a lot of us, the Dandler sled, and you have your setup for that. How do you prepare your sled, your runners, your hooks, your lines, and all of that? Do you use different sleds, different techniques when you're racing, or it's same as your training?
No, I pretty well use the exact same sled and equipment for training and racing. Only difference would be is maybe I'd have a little bit more, safety gear in the sled for training, with, more cold weather gear, extra parkas for myself, extra dog blankets and whatnot. And when you get to the race, it'll be a little bit lighter, but different type of skis. I use exclusively just a straight PTEX based runner on my race sled. And I like the way that those wax and hold wax, and I feel the glide is a little bit better. They're also a little bit lighter. I do specially modify my sled bags. We're always concerned about safety as a primary focus, and having a dog. If a dog needs to have a ride in the sled for any number of reasons, I like to have options in case there's a malfunction with the equipment, and potentially would be a zipper breaking, or some webbing coming undone. So my sled bag does have some different features than what the standard Dandler sled bag does, and those are just some add-ons that we extra webbing and extra lashing, and actually a backup zipper on each zipper. So just some different ideas there, but pretty well the exact same Dandler sled that anybody else is running in the terms of that, with the exception of maybe a few alterations to the sled bag. But the sled, I believe, is attached the same way as most people. I use a carabiner out the front, and I do use a leash, or I call it a safety line. A lot of the Europeans use it for pedaling. I like to use it as a safety, so I don't need to have both hands on the brush, on the handle, or one hand. I can kind of lean back and let my hand just hold onto a rope right there. So I do use that for cornering. I do use that as an extra snub line, and I do use that to possibly help lift or lower the gang line on corners to allow the big dog teams to turn corners properly. And then if you do get a dog to the wrong side of the line, it aids in that. And that's just a 6 or 8 foot piece of rope that's connected directly to the carabiner right in front of the sled. And what it does is I'm able to just have another item in my hand to hold on to if I do reach in my sled bag to grab a jacket or something. I'm still connected to the sled.
Buddy, we're just about out of time here, and I always ask our guests the same question, and I'm interested to hearing your advice as well, and that is if a person is getting involved in mushing, and I know you're involved in all types with the stage racing with your wife, and of course the circuit you run on. What would you tell that person who's just getting involved? One piece of advice, please.
Yeah, good question. I would advise them to come to a dog race, to come to a sled dog kennel, and to volunteer some time there. Ask a lot of questions, and then really put in some volunteer hours and do some research, and really try to limit your focus on what you want to do, whether it wants to be, and what you're capable of doing. A person in the middle of Manhattan can't have a 6-dog team, but they could have 1 dog, and then they could compete in the Canny Cross sports and the human powered, dog powered sports. So get your focus set on what you want to do and the time frame that you're allowed. Spend some time at some sled dog races, and travel and possibly to some sled dog kennels that you would be focused on, whether it was distance racing. I would go and visit a distance mushing kennel. Whether it was ultra fast speed in the limited class, I would go and visit some of them kennels for a day or two, just to get a hands-on experience of what's going on and see if that's going to work into your lifestyle. It's a lot of time restraint, and it's a big commitment, and talk it over with your family, talk it over with your loved ones, and then last but not least, definitely take your wallet, go to the toilet, pull out $100 bill, and flush it down the toilet. And if it doesn't bother you, try mushing.
Excellent. KP, close us out here.
Buddy, I really, really enjoyed chatting with you. Thank you so much for some of the input, and I wish we had more time to chat with you. You guys, between you, Terry, I'm sure Lena, we're going to have tons of information. Good luck with your training season, and looking forward to see you on the Alaskan circuit soon.
Super, you guys. Thanks a lot, and we appreciate what you guys are doing for the sport of sled dog racing. Anytime you want to chat, feel free to give me a call. I'm always open to that.
Excellent. So we're talking to Buddy Streeper today, and on behalf of my co-host KP, this is Robert for The Dog Driver. We will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
This episode of the podcast is sponsored by First Paw Coffee Company. Learn more at firstpaw.coffee.
From First Paw Media, this is The Dog Driver Show. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we invite you to subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you can see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your hosts are Robert Forto and Parto. Our producer is Robert Forto and created for First Paw Media.